The room was bathed in soft lighting provided by the floor lamp in the corner. Peter, sitting in an armchair, massaged his temples as he stared at an old family portrait above the fireplace. The image depicted his father in a military uniform, looking proudly at the camera. Nicole, sitting on the sofa a few meters away from him, silently observed Peter for a moment. "You haven't told me much about your mother, you know," she began hesitantly. "I think we've been together long enough for me to get to know her, don't you think?" Peter sighed deeply. "It's not that simple, Nick," he said, looking at her with heavy eyes. "My mother, Louisa, she never got over my father's death. She moved to that village in search of peace, a way to escape the memories of the city." Nicole moved closer, placing a comforting hand on Peter's knee. "But you visited her since then, right?" He nodded. "Yes, a few times. But you know how I am, with my military career. Always busy, always following in my father's footsteps." Nicole smiled sadly. "You're very proud of him, aren't you?" Peter got up and walked to the window. "Every day I wonder if he would be proud of me," he murmured. "My mother lives alone in that village. She's found peace there. She loves growing flowers, you know, and she makes the best jams you've ever tasted." Nicole's face lit up with curiosity. "Jams?" Peter laughed, the sound echoing softly in the room. "Yes, strawberries, raspberries, plums. She says it's her way of preserving the beauty of things. Each jar of jam is like a piece of summer that lasts all year." Nicole stood up and hugged Peter from behind, resting her head on his back. "I'd love to meet your mother, Peter, and taste those jams." Peter turned to look at her, a faint smile touching his lips. "Maybe it's time, then." They embraced, finding comfort in each other's arms, two hearts ready to face the past. Days later, Nicole paced restlessly through the small apartment, her fingers caressing the frame of one of her paintings. She often got lost in the colors and brushstrokes, finding in them the comfort that life in the orphanage rarely offered. Nicole grew up without her parents, who died in a car accident, leaving her as the sole survivor in the orphanage where she spent much of her life. She had a friend named Clara, and they used to play together. Clara was the same age as Nicole, and their connection was extraordinary. However, time passed, and destiny led them down different paths. "Are you okay?" Peter asked, emerging from the bathroom with a towel around his neck. He noticed Nicole's worried expression and approached her, his eyes seeking hers. Nicole swallowed hard, the words stuck in her throat. "Peter, what if your mother doesn't like me?" He furrowed his brow. "Why wouldn't she? You're amazing, Nick." She gave a sad smile, averting her gaze. "I'm an orphan, a painter. I don't have a traditional family or a well-known surname, and I'm waiting for government housing because I can't afford one." Peter stepped closer, placing his hands on her shoulders and pulling her into a tight embrace. "Nicole, my mother will love you for who you are, not for what you have. You're a fighter, and that's more important than any lineage or wealth." Nicole pulled away slightly, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "But what if?" Peter interrupted gently, placing a finger on her lips. "Let's face this together. I'm with you." After a final check of their bags, they set off, Nicole's anxiety growing with every mile. They approached the village, and she watched the landscape pass by the window, trees and fields giving way to the small houses and streets of the village. Upon arrival, a picturesque house with a flowered garden stood out. Nicole took a deep breath, gripping Peter's hand as they walked together towards the uncertain destination. In her heart, she hoped that Louisa would see her for who she truly was and not for the shadows of her past. The sun cast golden rays through the treetops as Peter's car parked in front of Louisa's house. The residence exuded rustic charm, surrounded by a stunning garden filled with vibrant flowers and dancing butterflies. The house's door swung open, revealing a middle-aged woman with her gray hair loosely tied in a bun. Her blue eyes, brimming with emotion, lit up upon seeing Peter. "My dear," exclaimed Louisa, opening her arms. Peter rushed to her, enveloping her in a tight hug. Nicole, watching the scene from a distance, felt a lump in her throat. She timidly approached, memories flooding back as her eyes fixed on the flower beds. She found herself back at the orphanage with small hands covered in dirt as she helped the old gardener, Mr. Bennett, plant daisies and roses. He always said that flowers were like children, needing love and care to flourish. Louisa, noticing Nicole lost in thought, approached and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "Do you like my garden, dear?" Nicole smiled, her eyes still moist. "Yes, it reminds me of my childhood. I used to help in the orphanage garden. It was my sanctuary." Louisa pulled her into a warm embrace. "Then we have something in common. This garden has been my solace since I lost my husband. It helps me feel connected to him in some way." Peter, observing the two most important women in his life connect, felt a wave of relief and happiness. Louisa, pulling away from the hug, looked into Nicole's eyes and said, "I've always wished for Peter to find someone who would make him as happy as his father made me, and by the look in his eyes, I believe he has." Nicole blushed, but her smile was genuine. "I just want the best for him, just like you do." And with the garden as a silent witness, three souls began to weave unbreakable bonds. Upon returning to the city, with the sound of bells and the sweet scent of flowers still in their minds, Peter and Nicole found themselves in their modest apartment in the heart of the city. The urban bustle contrasted with the calm of Louisa's village, but they were excited to embark on a new chapter of their lives. The living room was filled with stacked boxes, covered furniture, and paintbrushes wet with paint. Amidst laughter and minor arguments about wall colors, they made the place their own. "What do you think of a sky blue shade for the bedroom?" Nicole suggested, pointing to a color sample. Peter laughed, giving her a playful look. "I thought you might prefer something more artistic, maybe a mural with one of your paintings." "Oh, do you think I'm that predictable?" she said, throwing a cloth at him. One evening, while unpacking the last kitchen items, Nicole took Peter's hand, guiding him to the couch. With bright eyes and a trembling voice, she said, "Peter, we have one more addition coming to our family." She placed his hand on her belly, a shy smile on her lips. He looked at her momentarily puzzled before understanding lit up his face. "You mean, yes?" Nicole nodded. "I'm pregnant." Excitement enveloped them, hugs, kisses, and laughter filled the small apartment. They talked about names, what the nursery would look like, and all their plans for the future. As the days went by, the apartment transformed. The spare room was painted in a soft shade of green, with small animal drawings on the walls courtesy of Nicole's artistic skills. Conversations about strollers and cribs soon turned into discussions about buying a car. "What if we get that SUV model? It would be perfect for the family," Peter suggested one afternoon, flipping through a car catalog. Nicole smiled, "As long as it has space for painting equipment and a baby, count me in." Together, they dreamed, planned, and built a home filled with love, hope, and anticipation for the bright future unfolding before them. Despite the love Peter had for Nicole, he lived at the barracks, and she often found herself alone. With the first rays of sunlight filtering through the curtains, Nicole would wake up, often discovering Peter's side of the bed empty. The letters and messages he sent from the barracks or distant regions were a source of solace, but also a constant reminder of the dangerous career he had chosen, following in his father's footsteps. Days passed, months passed until she had her little Evelyn, a child so beautiful and so dearly loved. On a particularly chilly morning, Nicole sat at the kitchen table, Peter's most recent letter in hand. "He says he's okay, Evelyn," she said, looking at the little Evelyn playing on the floor with her toys. Evelyn, with her wavy brown hair and attentive eyes, looked up and said with a seriousness beyond her few years, "Daddy always comes back, Mommy. He promised." That determination, that strength of character, reminded Nicole so much of Peter. In many ways, Evelyn was the spitting image of her father, not just in looks, but in her unwavering tenacity and optimism. To distract her mind from Peter's absence and strengthen their family bonds, Nicole made frequent trips with Evelyn to the village to visit Louisa. The grandmother and granddaughter shared a special bond, often wandering through the garden, with Louisa telling stories about Peter when he was a boy. "You know, Evelyn," Louisa began on one of these walks, "your father was always the most adventurous of the boys. He would climb the tallest trees and run through endless fields, but he always came home at sunset." Evelyn laughed, "Just like he does now, Grandma." Nicole, watching them from a distance, felt grateful for Louisa's constant presence in their lives. It was a comfort to know that even in Peter's extended absences, they had a loving family around them. Visits to Louisa became a balm for Nicole's soul, a refuge from the fear and uncertainty that often consumed her as they awaited Peter's safe return. The three generations of women found strength and comfort in each other until one day, with twilight enveloping the city in an orange shroud, a military officer knocked on Nicole's apartment door. With a racing heart, she opened the door, seeing the officer's serious face. He handed her a sealed letter with the official army emblem. "Mrs. Nicole," he began, his voice carrying a tone of formality and concern. "I regret to inform you that Peter has been assigned to a mission in a combat zone. Your husband was selected due to his skill and experience." Nicole felt like the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. "Combat zone, but he told me he would be in training for a few more months." The officer looked at her with empathy. "Plans change, ma'am. The services need quick responses. Peter is well prepared and one of the best." After the officer's departure, Nicole, feeling dazed, slowly opened the letter Peter had written about his new mission, trying to reassure her that everything would be okay and asking her to stay strong for Evelyn. In the days and weeks that followed, a cloud of anxiety hung over Nicole. Every piece of news about conflicts and military casualties made her heart leap with worry. She constantly found herself looking at her phone, hoping for a call or message from Peter. On one particularly lonely night, a notification lit up Nicole's phone. It was a message from Peter. "Hi dear, I'm okay. Just know that I think of you and Evelyn every day. Stay strong. I love you." It was a brief consolation, but it was enough. Nicole read and reread those words, finding in them the strength to face another day. Day after day, the routine continued. Nicole clung to the small messages and updates from Peter. Every word written by him was a reminder of his love and commitment, not only to his country but to his family. And while worry never left her, hope and love always found a way to brighten her darkest days. Nicole couldn't bear the overwhelming worry, and it had been a week since she had heard from Peter until one cloudy afternoon. Two army officers approached Nicole's apartment building. They wore solemn expressions, and a sense of apprehension filled the air. As soon as Nicole opened the door, she knew her worst fears had become a reality. "Mrs. Nicole," the older officer began with a solemn voice, "it is with deep regret that we bring you the news of your husband's death. Sergeant Peter. He died in combat, fulfilling his duty with honor." Nicole felt a wave of cold run down her spine, and her legs threatened to give way. She grabbed the doorframe for support. "No, this can't be true. He said he'd come back." The younger officer, with moist eyes, handed her Peter's folded flag and medals. "He was a brave man, ma'am. We deeply mourn your loss." The days that followed were a blur for Nicole. She moved as if in a nightmare, unable to accept the reality. The silence in the house was deafening. Peter's laughter and stories now distant memories. Evelyn, with her childlike innocence, couldn't fully comprehend the magnitude of the loss. "Mommy, why are you crying? When is Daddy coming back from work?" she would frequently ask. Nicole tried to find words to explain, but often found herself holding Evelyn tight, trying to find some comfort in her touch. "Daddy won't come back, sweetheart. He's in heaven now, watching over us." Evelyn looked confused and then, with tears in her eyes, said, "But I wanted him to come back. I miss him, Mommy." And so, mother and daughter found themselves immersed in shared grief, each trying to find their own way through the darkness of mourning. While Nicole clung to memories, Evelyn clung to the hope of a reunion, even if only in dreams. The pain of such a profound loss united them, reminding them of the fragility and preciousness of life. Years passed, and Evelyn, now 18, became the epitome of resilience. Her features mirrored her father Peter's face, but her eyes carried the determination and strength she had learned from Nicole. She became the rock on which Nicole leaned, especially on the toughest days when the memories of loss were overwhelming. On an autumn Saturday, Nicole walked through the central park of the city. The leaves from the trees fell gently, forming a golden carpet under her feet. Lost in her thoughts, she was startled when a familiar voice called out to her. "Nicole, is that you? Oh my goodness, it's been so long." Nicole looked up to see Clara's radiant face, a childhood friend she had lost touch with. Clara had been her confidant during school years, a friend who always understood her. The two embraced warmly, feeling a wave of nostalgia. "Clara, I can't believe it's you. How have you been?" Nicole said, wiping away a tear. "I'm well, dear, and you? I heard about Peter." I'm so sorry," Clara replied, her eyes conveying sincere compassion. Nicole sighed. "It's been tough, especially for Evelyn, but we're moving forward, one day at a time." Clara nodded understandingly. "Come to my house tonight. We can catch up. I feel like both of us need that." Nicole hesitated for a moment, but Clara's warm invitation was comforting. "All right, it sounds like a good idea." That night, in a cozy, candlelit house scented with comforting aromas, Nicole and Clara reunited. They laughed, cried, and shared stories, reminiscing about old times and healing old wounds. Nicole realized that sometimes healing comes in the most unexpected moments and from the most unlikely places. And on that night, an old friendship proved to be the balm her aching heart so desperately needed. And you, have you ever experienced a loss as profound as Nicole's? How did you cope with it all? Share your response in the comments. Clara's house was filled with a welcoming atmosphere. The soft light of candles flickered throughout the space, casting dancing shadows on the walls. In the living room, cozy armchairs and a lit fireplace created a warm and comforting scene. Open windows allowed a gentle breeze to enter, carrying the fresh scent of the night. Nicole sat in an armchair, holding a glass of red wine in her trembling hands. Clara, beside her, listened attentively and empathetically. Evelyn was on the other side of the room, trying to keep her distance, but her evident concern showed in her gaze. "I try, Clara," Nicole sobbed. "Every day, I try to be strong for Evelyn, but the pain, it's like I'm being torn apart inside. Every day, Peter was my everything." Clara placed her hand on Nicole's shoulder, trying to offer some comfort. "I can imagine, dear, but you have Evelyn. She needs you now more than ever." Evelyn, hearing those words, gathered courage and spoke with a firm voice. "Mom, I feel your pain. I feel it every day, but I also feel like I've lost you along with Dad. It's like you've given yourself over to grief, and I'm here alone, trying to hold everything together." Nicole, surprised and cut by Evelyn's words, turned to face her. "Evelyn, I didn't know you felt this way. I thought I was doing enough." Evelyn shook her head, her eyes brimming with tears. "Mom, I understand that you're hurting, but we're a family. We need to be strong together. I feel like I'm trying to save both of us, but you won't let me in. You won't let me help you." The room fell silent for a moment, only the crackling of the fireplace could be heard. The tension between mother and daughter was palpable, each absorbing the other's words, raw and exposed emotions. Clara, feeling the need to intervene, said gently, "Perhaps it's time to start healing together. You have each other, and that's what matters." In Clara's living room, a comfortable silence began to settle after the outburst of emotions. Nicole looked at her daughter, her eyes once clouded by pain now showing a renewed determination. She stood up and walked over to Evelyn, hugging her tightly. "Evelyn," Nicole whispered, her voice trembling. "I know I hurt you, but I want you to know that my love for you never diminished. It was the fear of losing you, just as I lost your father, that kept me distant." Evelyn nestled in her mother's embrace, her tears wetting Nicole's blouse. "Mom, I love you, and even though I felt alone, I always knew you were doing the best you could." Clara watched the scene with a gentle smile, feeling a wave of relief. It was evident to her that the strength of the love between mother and daughter surpassed any adversity. "You two have a special connection," Clara remarked, "a bond that cannot be broken by any storm. Past hurts are just that, the past. What matters is what you decide to do from now on." Nicole released Evelyn and held her hands. "We will get through this together. I promise that from now on, I'll let you in, let you help me, and together we will heal our wounds." Evelyn nodded, her eyes shining with hope. "And I promise to always be by your side, Mom, no matter the challenges life brings." The three women joined in a group hug, each feeling a deep gratitude for the presence of the others. The evening, which began with tears and painful revelations, ended with promises of a brighter future and a renewal of unwavering family love. Outside the window, the stars shone in the night sky, witnessing the beginning of a new chapter in Nicole and Evelyn's lives, a chapter of healing, hope, and unconditional love. Following that, the next day started like any other, with Evelyn and Nicole busy with their daily tasks. But everything changed when the doorbell rang. Nicole, drawn by the sound, opened the door expecting to see a delivery or a neighbor. Instead, she found a familiar figure, more worn and older. Her heart almost stopped. "Peter," she whispered, unbelieving. Peter, standing before her with tired eyes and a bearded face, nodded. "Yes, Nicole, it's me." She let out a muffled cry, covering her mouth with her hands. Evelyn, hearing the commotion, rushed to the door. Her gaze shifted from shock to disbelief upon recognizing the father she believed was dead. "Dad," her voice trembled. Peter entered slowly, his eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "I'm sorry for everything." Nicole and Evelyn embraced him, all the emotions of the past rushing back with overwhelming force. Amid sobs and tears, Peter began to explain. "I was held captive for years," he began, his voice hoarse with emotion. "The place was so isolated that I lost all sense of time. They told me my family had been informed of my death." Evelyn held her father's hand. "How did you manage to escape?" Peter looked at his daughter. "There was a rebellion in the camp where I was held. I seized the opportunity amidst the chaos and ran. I ran until I couldn't anymore, and then I kept hiding, hitching rides, doing whatever it took to make my way back home." Nicole sobbed. "And the body they identified is yours?" Peter shook his head. "War is a place of chaos, Nicole. The person they found resembled me, and with all the traumas and pressures of war, it was easy for them to make the wrong identification." The reunion was bittersweet, with tears of both joy and sorrow flowing freely. Nicole, Evelyn, and Peter reunited once more, held each other tightly, knowing they had a second chance to be a family again. The sadness of the previous years was replaced by the hope of a future together. They had lost so much, but the love they shared was unshakable. They were together again against all odds. The reunion was not just a momentary celebration, it was a chance for all of them, Peter, Nicole, and Evelyn, to rebuild their fragmented lives and relationships. The first days were marked by long, heartfelt conversations where pent-up feelings and suppressed memories emerged with overwhelming force. One evening while they were having dinner, Nicole looked at Peter, her eyes shimmering with held-back tears. "I buried you in my heart, Peter. Every day, I wondered if we could have had more time, more memories. I had to be strong for Evelyn, but internally, I was broken." Peter reached for her hand, their fingers intertwined. "I know, my love. Every day in that dark place, it was the thought of the two of you that kept me alive. I had to come back. I had to fight for our future." Evelyn, normally so reserved, interjected, "I felt lost for so long, but now with you back, I feel like I found a part of me that was missing." The days that followed were filled with precious little moments. Peter watched Evelyn graduate from college, an event he was sure he would miss. He also ignited his passion for gardening, turning their backyard into a lush oasis reminiscent of the peaceful days in the village with Louisa. Nicole, on the other hand, found inspiration in her art again. She began painting a series that depicted her journey of pain, loss, hope, and reunion. The paintings touched the hearts of many, becoming a sensation in local galleries. As life went on with its usual ups and downs, there was a palpable difference in the household. There was an energy, a vitality that could only be attributed to the miracle they had experienced. They laughed more, loved more deeply, and cherished every moment together. The days passed, and that family grew happier and closer with each passing day. On a sunny afternoon while they were all in the garden, Peter looked at his family and said, "Life has a funny way of testing us, but in the end, it's love and resilience that triumph." "I am living proof of that," Nicole smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "We are together now, that's what matters." Evelyn, joining them, added, "The past shaped us, but it's the future that defines us. And I couldn't ask for a better future than being here with you." With that, the three of them embraced, looking forward to a future full of promise and love. And then, Nicole invited her childhood friend to a beautiful dinner to share the news and show that Peter had returned. Clara was so happy for her friend, and Nicole paused for a brief moment at that dinner, thinking she had never been happier. She had everything she wanted and loved close to her. Thank you for joining us today on Deep Stories. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video.